Hello and welcome to the Elder Tree podcast. My name is Twiggy Dawn, founder of the Elder Tree and Alchemilla Herbals. You are listening to the Herbal Educators segment, where each new moon I will be inviting a series of guests to chat about the world of herbal education, about their passions and motivations, and their dreams for the future of herbal medicine in Australia. Today I interview the potent and prolific Jacqui Bushell. We travelled together down a winding, colourful road of Jacqui's experiences and gain a beautiful insight into her wisdom, which is based on over 40 years of being a practitioner and herbal educator, blending the modalities of nature-based therapy, essences, herbal medicine, Reiki, meditation, and energy healing. Jacqui is also an author and runs an incredible range of desert retreats and online workshops, as well as face-to-face workshops. She has been a teacher at Endeavour College, Nature Care College, the Awareness Institute, and within many other spaces. She's been dancing with the mythic imagination for most of her life through her love of the wisdom held in fairy tales and in her work as a spiritual herbalist, listening for the voices and the stories in the land. In this interview, we speak about reciprocity and accountability in our relationships with the plants and honouring them as teachers with a strong commitment, and also about being responsible in the way that we work with these plants. We talk about the importance of storytelling, the importance of having a deep level of listening with our heart and with our bodies and with the land. We discuss the widespread current lack of custodian mindset in wild harvesting Indigenous medicines and the need for sustainable and appropriate dosages of herbs, particularly because of the rampant consumerism of herbal medicine that is currently globally taking place. Jacqui shares her potent vision for the future of herbal education in Australia. Her passion is contagious and she has a strong, bright spark in the realm of herbal medicine in Australia. It was an absolute honour to interview her and deepen our connection, and I invite all of you to make a pot of tea, sit down and listen to this beautiful interview and to the wisdom that Jacqui has to share. Hello, Jacqui. Welcome onto the Herbal Education segment of the Elder Tree podcast. Thank you so much for joining me on here today.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Twiggy. Thank you so much for asking me.
Yeah, it's quite a pleasure and an honour for me. I've been following you for quite a while, as I've said to you, and I really love the depth and the breadth of your experience and the spaces that you're working in, and I really look forward to having a chat with you and getting to know you a bit better.
Oh, thanks. Likewise. I'm really keen to see what paths we might meander down together.
Mm-hmm.
It's always a delight, these conversations.
Mm. You've just returned from the Wise Women's Conference, haven't you?
Yes, gorgeous, gorgeous group of women. And it's just beautiful to be with a group of women who are so inspired by what's possible when we come together in communion with each other, creating communities, and in communion with nature. And that deep level of listening with our heart and with our bodies and with the land. It's radical and revolutionary and revelatory as well, to have a little alliteration moment. Wise Women's is a beautiful, beautiful. I don't like to just call it an event. It's an experience that's uplifting and rich. Yeah. So hope to see you there next year.
Most definitely. In fact, with the other podcast presenters, we've been talking about having a bit of a kind of team meeting get together there at the next Wise Women's. I went to one quite a few
Yes.
years ago. I think it might have been the second one. And I was really impressed with the herbal presence, with the amount of amazing people that I met there, and I got to meet like Sally Kingsford Smith and a lot of people that I've stayed in
Yes.
regular contact with since then. And it's kind of like that if you get a group of women together that are really like in their power, inevitably plants start coming into it, and plant wisdom sharing starts to really come into it. So yeah, I really love that about the gathering, and look forward to definitely coming along next year. And I'm sure you'll be presenting again, and so I look forward to getting to receive that as well.
Yes.
So, so just with the interview today, the first thing that I would love to explore before we get much into everything else is that I would love to know what your experience as being a student of herbal medicine has been like. What your experience within the inside and outside of the institutional world. You know, what your main influences have been, you know, books, people, teachers, plants, yeah, who've been your biggest teachers that have kind of got you to this point so far.
Okay. Um, I'm just thinking the first one was John Lust's Herb book that I actually found in the supermarket in Fitzroy. And I just threw it in my shopping basket and went home and started trying to work out what on earth we had growing around Fitzroy and Carlton, and was just fascinated. I was, oh, maybe 20, something like that. And I just started making up teas because I'd never ever even come across the concept of herbal medicine before. I had no idea. Uh, it just opened this doorway of possibilities, and then I was training as a nurse at the time, and also studying other things at university, and I suffered pretty severe burnout, and somebody said, go and see this woman, and she was a herbalist. And I went into the room, and there were shelves and shelves of brown bottles, and the whole room just smelt like, oh, it smelt like this glorious compost heap, and I just fell in love. I just wanted a room of brown bottles that smelt of liquids, and to pour one into the other. It was like watching pure alchemy, and something in me just lit up. And I don't know quite how it happened, but within a few months, I'd resigned from left university, and had and was suddenly enrolled full time at the Southern School of Natural Therapies. I think that was 1990, uh, in Fitzroy, and I started studying herbal medicine full time. And that was a glorious college because there was a lot of emphasis on vitalism and understanding the paradigms of science, and understanding the philosophy of holism, and the difference between uh, our approach as herbalists and how herbs actually engage with our body, with our physicality, with our mind, with our emotions, compared to what happens when you're working with a biochemical pharmaceutical agent. And what I've noticed over my time as working as a herbalist is that line blurring more and more and more, with herbal pharmacy coming in a much more, with a greater biochemical awareness, which is not the roots of how herbs work with the body at all.
Mm.
Our herbs tonify or relax, or can stimulate. We don't specifically target particular receptors on cells. So being steeped in this level of engagement with philosophy and with brown bottles and bodies, it was absolutely heavenly. So I started off down there, and then a couple of years later, I moved up to Sydney, and once I felt brave enough to drive my little 1966 Vauxhall over the harbour bridge, which took a while because I'm a bit nervous of bridges, and I actually enrolled at Nature Care College, and studied there. So in my probably at the Southern School, there were just glorious teachers. Asunda Hunter was down there. Um, let's see. Peter, what was his name? Peter Cook, I think it was, and I was inspired by John Lust and David Hoffman. His beautiful herbal, the holistic herbal was the first proper herbal medicine book that I got, and Barbara Griggs and Mrs. Greaves, and starting to steep myself in those books. I was just this avid reading and discovering this world that engaged with engaged with nature's aliveness, and it reframed my whole sense of of life force, and how the world engages with us, not just me with it.
Mm.
So I was very focused on plants and the world as medicine. And I guess gradually over the years as well, I've realized no, it's actually much more than medicine. It's the heart of the invitation of how we can allow ourselves to be touched and participated with, and that we also have an accountability to the plants, not just to sit down and gain their medicine and then to use it, but I've learnt that it's this dance of reciprocity. So what
Mm.
happened at Nature Care, oh my goodness, Raymond Coury, I had Raymond for 2 years of herbs and just adored him. And so I had him. There was some just amazing nutritionists. There was, and also at that time I was really inspired by down at the Southern School, which was established by Judy and Alf Jacker. So I was inspired by what Judy was doing as well. Um, so up at Nature Care, I was there for a year or so full time, and then I moved to the UK for a couple of years and deferred. But I did a bit of study with Michael Tierra over there, and Leslie Tierra, and a few others, and started realizing the difference in the approach between what a lot of folks were doing in England and in Europe, and the difference with Australian education as well.
Mm.
So the teaching about drop dosing, for instance, and the greater understanding uh, of the, I'll just call it the personality or the character of the herbs. And I started realizing that what I was being taught, I didn't have a clarity of the difference, say, between a whole bunch of nervine relaxants or a whole bunch of um, pulmonary expectorants. I didn't know one plant from the other. And that's because I didn't know the plants. I was memorizing lists and lists and lists, like 50 herbs a year or something, of actions and indications, but I didn't know the
Mm.
plants. So it was when I was living in the UK and Europe that I actually started to get to know the plants themselves a little more. And then I came back to Australia and finished studying at Nature Care, and then my further education started. I thought it was a lot while I was studying at Nature Care, but what clients teach you, what the plants teach you, what all the other research that you start doing teaches you,
Mm.
um, that's when um, I started exploring in a really big way, and just fell madly, passionately in love with Matthew Wood, and Juliet de Berkeley Levy, Julia and Rosemary Gladstar, and some of the other ones in the States, Margie Flint and Rosalie de la Forêt, and just so many of them. She's in Europe, that I started expanding my relationship with the plants, and started to learn more about them as key teachers in my life. So as well as all of those people, I'd have to put dandelion in there, and calendula. Calendula has been with me since the word go. It's been a guide. Um, and different plants that have come in at different times. Nettle and mugwort have been major teachers for me over the past year, and rose, always rose. Uh, so just listening to them and what they have to share. So it was sort of a real blossoming of my senses, of my tastes, of realizing how limited my sight was, that plants engage through emotions and through tactility and tastes and all the varieties of tastes that are possible. So
Mm.
that's sort of been a continuing education.
Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. Thank you so much for taking us down that colourful journey. A very diverse
Mm.
array of probably many unlisted teachers and influence as well. So many of those names that you mentioned, from David Hoffman to Rosemary Gladstar and Juliet of the Herbs, and yeah, just so many of all those names, and even just those key plants that you identified as your teachers. If I just added probably plantain to the list, then you probably got my list right there.
Yes.
Just all those ones that you
Yeah.
listed, I was like, wow, they're really, like, I see them as great teachers in my life, not just medicines that I'm working
Mhm.
with or growing or building a ongoing relationship with, but they're real teacher plants, aren't they? And often it's
Mhm.
the humble ones that people don't so much recognize as the teacher plants, and but yet they have so much to share if we just stop and listen
Yes.
to them.
Yes, and they've had millennia of being in service to us, for their medicine, their wisdom, what they hold, and the prolificness with which they grow around the
Mm.
world. So it's like celebrate them for their continued offering.
hmm And not just in service to us, because, like you said before, that reciprocity and that two-way street
Yes.
of that they're not just something to utilize. That we, a lot of people are kind of waking back up to this concept or this reality of it, being we having to care for the medicine and have a relationship and be offering,
Yes.
and yeah, having that be a two-way street rather than just coming with our hands out and saying, what are you going to do for me? Taking without really thought for the a custodianship kind of mindset and a responsible kind of mindset with the plants. So I really love that, how much you come from that angle, because
Yes.
that also really reflects what I believe and how I feel as well.
Yeah, there's a real accountability
Mm.
in that relationship. If I'm going to accept you as a teacher, then how am I honoring you? Uh, what is it that you'd like? I know Mugwort the has really asked me to step up. If I'm going to say yes to Mugwort as a teacher, then my commitment is I need to share about her as much as I can.
Mm.
So hence all the Mugwort immersion ceremonies that I've been
Mm.
offering to, it's like, okay, that's part of my commitment of thank you
Mhm.
to Mugwort, for instance, or being aware of the sustainability issues with the rampant consumerism around herbs over the last 20,
Mm.
30 odd years, uh, of just that take of them, and how they're being farmed, or the environments that are being damaged by these 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 medicines, the billions of tons that are being asked for, clamored for.
Mm.
It's a really difficult thing to negotiate how unsustainable, in many ways, herbal medicine is in with the marketing that it has
Mhm.
these days. Mm.
Yeah, yeah, especially when that's not being farmed or wild harvested in the right way. Like, I was sitting with a local Jitterbug elder. The Jitterbug are the people of the area that I'm living in, and I was sitting with an uncle the other week, and I had no idea that this had been going on, but he was talking about some people from the I think he called it like the health food industry or something, had kind of come along and wanted to identify some certain species that were endemic to this region, and that were really important for not just for medicine, but for initiation processes and that for the local people here. And not long after they'd been shown, this uncle came back to those areas, and they'd just been decimated to the point where he's having a hard time finding any of those plants. And so, yeah, we had a big prayer a couple of weeks ago for that. Got a group of people together to try to send out a message to Great Spirit or the universe or the powers that be to try to turn that mindset around, and try to bring people into that custodianship mindset, rather than, yeah, like we're talking about, rather than just taking in such a way that it actually multiplies the future harvest. Hang on, yeah, you know what I mean, like that
Yes,
you're actually encouraging growth and encouraging more medicine. So yeah, it's an
yes,
unfortunate story, just reflecting what's going on. But I really hope that by shining light on those kind of things, that we can start to create a bit of a change in a more sustainable way of gaining our medicines and working with our
yes,
medicines as well. Hmm.
yes, yes. That sense of entitlement
Mm.
to go in and strip an area, or to dig up an area in order to get a bit of golden seal out of the forest.
Mhm.
Um, yes, we need to be in this for the plants
Mm-hmm.
from their side as well as our own. And this trendification, let's make up a word there, of particular plants like just the stripping of cat's claw from South America, or what's increasing these days as South America has been stripped of so many, and India of Siberia now, and the plants that are being looked for there, and also as well as there were certain plants that were being looked at in Alaska, and areas being stripped. Um, this this grasping,
Mm.
uh, and then the also one of the key things that I really learned was in my first year out of college. I was working at Bathurst Women's Health Centre as a naturopath there, and a lot of the women couldn't afford to buy a 200 ml bottle of herbs, so I started working with drop dosing in my first year out, just to make it affordable and accessible, and finding I was getting great
Mm.
results with that they didn't need 5 mils 3 times a day. So just finding out what actually, coming back to the magic of the minimum dose, as
Mm-hmm.
we say in homeopathy, of what is it that will actually work, instead of pushing. I think it's also a really big issues approach. What's the issue that you have? And this is how you address the issue. I'm sure you and so many others see in clinic these days. Your client comes in, they've got a bag of stuff that they've picked at the health food store or at Woolworths. They tip it upside down. And well, this one, the ginkgo's for my head, and the fish oils are for this, and and they've got a list of something for something, instead of this holistic approach and these active constituents that are focused on a particular issue, rather than looking at other ways of support or what's actually needed. Um, so this pushing for sedating a problem,
Mm.
rather than working with what might actually be going on, which means that there's this uh, push of making, and the money involved is so big.
Mm. Yeah, that approach is
I
just
love.
really so like focus on the symptomatic relief and, the allopathic kind of
Yes,
model and, they're isolating these
yes,
constituents and, kind of removing the soul from the plant really and, chopping it all up and it's
yes.
all just getting isolated and kind of furthering our disconnect as a human species. So when we can work with whole plants, often when you're working with whole plants, you don't need as much as well, or when you're working with whole medicines as well, because your
Yes,
body's recognizing it vibrationally. So it's connecting with the vibration, that kind of medicine from the plant, isn't it? As well, it's hard to feel the vibration if you're just getting an isolated constituent from a plant. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And it's a let something external fix me approach. And there's so much plastic with all of those things.
Not the
Yeah.
pretty brown bottles that first sparked your
No,
interest at your first.
belly brown
Yeah.
bottles. Yes.
Mm.
Mm.
So yeah, so I mean, you're quite you've become since those days of really being focused on being a student. I know you said that you'll always be a student, and we all will be, and I think that's an important thing to stay humble and open to always learning and growing, no matter our age or stage. But your kind of really intensive student days, made way for your your offerings now and being a teacher and being a practitioner. So I'm just wondering because I know you do teach a lot of different spaces. You like with the Reiki and with the anointing and just lots of different kind of plant connection spaces and lots of different offerings you have. But kind of in the realm with the plants, what made you want to start teaching other people? Like, what made you decide to put energy into that rather than just being a practitioner?
Mm. It was entirely accidental and not something I would ever have chosen at all. It was, I'd taken about, with all my deferring, maybe 8, 9 years or so between the Southern School and graduating at Nature Care, with a lot of travel in between. And so when I graduated, I'd been doing a lot of manufacturing for years. And I think it was Airdrie Grant gave me a job, or I was told there was a job going at Nature Care teaching herbal manufacturing. So I put my hand up, and I still don't know what prompted me to do that, because I'd never ever considered doing any level of speaking to more than two people at once, being largely hermit rising and, and an introvert. And so what happened that was extraordinary was I went in for that first class and I adored it. And I discovered something that I absolutely love in watching people discover discover a passion and to develop their skills in with something, and to be able to do that with plants was just, it was just the most delicious, wonderful feeling. And I discovered that I could do it quite well. I could translate things for people. I found I could translate concepts into practicality. So I I started teaching pretty much full time, as well as I was very busy, as well as having a clinic pretty much full time as well. And that's just stayed since, when was it, 97, um, in the teaching. So with the plants, I've been uh, making and engaging with essences of plants and rocks and places since, oh, I don't know, about 1990 as well. So I also have been teaching a lot of what essences are and working vibrationally with plants. This whole coming away from working with high doses of plants to coming into different realms of listening and sensitivity with the plant, with what it is that they communicate in the world, what it is of their pattern of consciousness, and then discovering and sharing ways of coming into communion with that, of learning how to perceive in those ways. So I guess it's about learning how to perceive specific frequencies, is in essence what uh, I was learning and what I was teaching. How to listen with a particular plant and get to know it really, really well, and to notice what the relationship is between you. And I was also doing a lot of teaching around doing that with the plants that are growing around you. So the herbs that nobody really was using at all, or that I'd never really learned about in clinic, like centauri, that was growing a lot around Sydney, and Biden's
Mm.
pilosa, and um, fumitory and nasturtium, and those ones. I know centauri has started to be made again more recently by some of the bigger companies. So working with those and exploring what there was locally, and so helping people get to know what's in their environment. So I guess that theme has continued all the way through. I've just tended to um, focus a bit more on developing ways of learning the languages of nature, which are other than words, but through the senses.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so, and they've just got more popular. I remember when I first started trying to put on plant spirit workshops, when was that? Oh, sort of in the late 90s, early 2000s,
Mm.
and I'd get one or two people, and or they just, nothing would happen. And now it's like, plant spirit, suddenly everybody is, yes, let's start engaging in this level. It's so exciting at the moment what I'm finding people are capable of. They come in and uh, within a few minutes they've already got the software and the hardware in their being. I mean, we did anyway, but it's more accessible now. We're so much more vibrationally sensitive, so just coming into cahoots with plants instantly, so then we can just use that as a platform to see where we might go and just to fly with what's possible. So
Mm.
that's really exciting what I'm seeing with the plant spirit communion.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's beautiful. I applaud you for holding that flame and keeping that alive, for the last 40 odd years, and just helping people, those two things, like bioregional medicine and being connected not just to what's in the herbal books and what you can source from overseas or other communities, having being people being able to be like empowered, informed and connected with the medicine that's growing around them, locally, regionally. That's so important, not just even on a herbal medicine level, but just on a human soul connection with nature, being a part of nature kind of level. And then also that plant spirit work as well is just so important with both of them, just bringing people back to being a part of nature and being connected. So I see both of those two things as like hugely important, now and probably forever, but just in this modern age of disconnect, and where everything's wrapped in plastic, like you said, and everything's so kind of so far removed, and we're decimating rainforests in the Amazon rather than turning to what's just growing in our backyards. Having those teachings like what you're offering are so important. So yeah, thank you for keeping that alive, for the past 40 something years, and offering those, and those sparks, because every time you teach someone and they turn around and they share that and they share that, and it's just helping with that remembrance, and helping with that, like inspiring people to turn
Yes.
back to these ways that our ancestors, it just would have been the way our ancestors were before all this modern
Mm.
civilization stuff came along.
Yes. Yes, it brings us into our bodies, and with a level of listening that we're not habituated to as commonly,
Mm,
unless we grew up in a Steiner school. Um, so, yes, yes, it brings in another level of aliveness and overcomes that separation.
mm,
Yeah, it brings people into caring.
mhm. Yeah, beautiful. So yeah, so I suppose that brings me the next question that I really love to ask people that come on here as well, is that what have been some of the unexpected gems for you in becoming
Mm.
like a kind of focusing mostly on the plant realm of what you offer? What have been some of the hidden gems for yourself and for your community, the things that you might not have expected to have gained from it, that have been really stood out to you?
Uh, mm. Well, there's a few things. There's what it's taught me about myself, uh, and realizing that it's never just me facilitating a workshop or whatever, or a program, that there's also the nature is also a co-facilitator there, that there's always so many unexpected things, and that I can trust that co-facilitation. I just need to listen and not try and control the process or have an agenda. So I've learned to have a plan and to be really flexible with it, because the weather might change something, who's growing, or there might be a particular issue that arises in the group, and then we can find what there is in the environment that is an immense support. So I've learned uh, to be immensely flexible, and to let go of those levels of rigid control. And uh, what's been just such gems is watching where people go with what it is that they do, and this sense of give them a little bit of an experience that they start to integrate and feel empowered by, and then watch it ripple through their communities. Watching um, I had an experience a couple of years ago when I was working many years ago at Leichhardt Women's Health Centre as a herbalist. There was a client who came in with a very particular, unique story, and it was so specific, and it was funny, and it was poignant, and I had the permission to share that story, and I told it in a few places, and it was about maybe 18 years later that somebody happened to mention this funny story that they'd heard from a friend in England. And they told the story. And I'm thinking, what the hell? That was my client. Nobody else would have done that. It was so specific. And and I realized, my goodness, this story has spread out, and it's gone around the world, the art of storytelling.
Mm,
And it came back to me. And I realized that was an immense gift of you have no idea of the impact that you have. You have no idea where one word or phrase might whizzle off to. So never feel that you're not doing enough, because you just don't know the impact that you might have. Or when you're in that workshop, I just call it teaching mode, where there's nature and there's plants and there's people and there's spirit and earth coming through and around the whole group. Something might come out of your mouth that you'll have no recollection of later. So it's like a level of being open to trusting that the words that need to be spoken will be spoken, or the words that need to be heard will be heard. I've had
Mm.
people come up to me and say, when you said blah de blah, that changed my life. And I've thought, I didn't say that. I said this, but you heard that. So I've learned a huge amount about perception of what happens when you say something, and of how it dances and twists and ducks under a wave and comes up as something else in somebody else's mind, and understanding, and of how people um, make things unique through the filter of their own perception and their belief and where they're at. So I've really learnt to trust the magic of that
Mm.
as well. That's been extraordinary. I used to get really hung up on, no, it was, this is what I said, and this is the bit that's important. Then I realized it doesn't matter, Jacqui. If it's something that might be dangerous, then it does. But what I teach is engagement and participation, and coming into cahoots with plants and themselves and spirit. So if this is what they hear, then that's what they're running with. And if that's what's helped bring in a gift of understanding or attunement or healing for them, uh, yeah, it's something is coming to place. So I've learned to trust that multidimensional entity in a space. It's this pure, I guess, I see it all the time with the storytelling work I do. It's like the audience calls forth the questions or words or the processes, and the land offers and moves things around. So I'm just the one who sets a few boundaries around stuff and can bring through a few words. So it's this dance between us and spirit, and the land and the audience and the me. And so that's really blown me away. I've gone from it's me and them to there's this movement, momentum,
Mm.
cahooting that we all do together, and it's so much bigger than anything I could imagine.
Mm.
So that is extraordinary and exciting.
Beautiful. That was so well articulated. Thank you for that. And you really articulated something that I've been experiencing a lot with my workshops that I haven't quite heard anyone else speaking about. I often have that moment happen in my different herbal workshops where in the sharing circle at the end, someone will try to like quote me or say something that I said that,
Mm.
really touched them or inspired something. And but then when they say it, I'm like, thinking I'm pretty sure I didn't say that, but that's great. Like what they're saying is amazing, and I'm like, hang on, I'm learning from you what you're
Yeah.
saying that you just learnt from me. But I actually like, wow, that's amazing what you just said. So
Let me, thanks for saying that again, so I can just jot that
yeah,
down, because I'd love to remember that myself.
totally. And
Yes.
that's where the teacher student relationship, that beautiful interplay of like I say something that sparks you to teach me to teach you, to like, that beautiful two-way street, even just between the teacher and the student, and how much you can learn by being a teacher as well if you listen to your students, and even if it's just reflecting back what you've been saying. So I really love that. And something I noticed recently as well, I know that you're a passionate storyteller, and I noticed that you have like some fairy tale, a course coming up about fairy tales, and do you feel to share a little bit
Yes.
about that?
Mm. Actually, I just did a masterclass yesterday on the power of fairy tales, because it's what I've really learned in all the workshops and courses and everywhere that I've run, even university level courses. People remember the stories. They might remember a few facts, but they've got to actually go back and revise the facts, but they recall the stories. So I like to, if I really want to land something for someone, I'll bring in, there might be a bit of information, but I'll bring in a living example of it, or a story that I've heard somewhere, or a myth, because it lands it in a different part of the brain. And that's what people remember. And they'll quote the stories. And they also remember the feeling that they have in the experience, uh, rather than maybe the actual information. So I also, in teaching, I'll try and vary what the state is of the place, or get them to vary their movement, or their how they're engaging, or what emotion might be being touched, just so things will land in different ways. And what I found with teaching, I'll get to this leads into the fairy tale and a lot of the other story work. Um, what I found is that when working a lot with essences, the essences themselves working so clearly with particular plants, they provide a framework of experience that will hold you because of the breadth of their consciousness and what it is that they communicate. Like, they communicate trust in self, or trust in environment, or recognizing oneness, or whatever it might be. So you come in with your issue, your state, your conflict, and as you rest in the chalice of that plant, it can bring you through that with numerous insights and out the other side. What I found is that there's only a small number of people who are interested in essences, or who think they're interested in essences. I usually find once they dive in, everybody falls in love with them because they're so extraordinary. But they often don't come in with that. And I do a lot of taking people out on the land, and a lot of soul work, I guess you'd say. It's always, any connection with plants is massively about personal transformation as well. So I realized that I needed another framework that would hold people in their journey from I'm stuck in this state, or this perception, or whatever it might be, to bring it through to support, re-guidance, reframing, integration, a new way of being, and to shapeshift a sense of their old sense of identity into something that's blossoming in another way. So one of the things I've always done is share a lot of stories about everything, and then I started engaging with fairy tales and with myths, because of their strong archetypal forces that they anchor. And there's very, very long stories about what they did for me and what they're still doing for me. They're like living beings. They're like these. I think of them kind of like animals, this living force of these stories that are so old. They've run over so many tongues for thousands of years. They're sort of polished like river stones, and there's this whole spectrum that you can engage with them at, and they hold opposites. Like, you can a wolf can be a teacher, a shapeshifter, a predator, a threat, a grandma eater. Grandma can be a shaman who becomes the wolf. A wolf can be lover. It holds opposites. So when you engage, for example, with the old version of the story of Red Riding Hood, which is very different from the Grimm brothers version, um, they were just moralizing, arrogant nationalists, really. But the old versions, they're connected so much with the earth. They've stories that have risen from the land, and I think of them like echo shamanic experiences. So when you bring in a story like Red Riding Hood, you're bringing in the forest, you're bringing in the crone, you're bringing in the goddess, you're bringing in wolves in all of their metaphorical um, richness. So when you start engaging with that story, because there's a thread of story, girl goes out, girl meets wolf, girl learns something from grandma, girl meets forest, all the way through to girl escapes with the help of a bunch of fairies, actually, in the original one. But uh, you've got I go in, meet a problem, and I come out the other end after having been engaged with various supernatural beings in magical ways and talking mice, that sort of thing. And then you come out the other end. So it gives you this framework of of being able to work through your stuff with this spectrum of rich consciousness. So I like to bring in, with the big earth work that I'm doing, I'll often bring in a story as a chalice to help hold people or to provide a framework as we explore ourselves and spirit and the land. And within that chalice of the story, uh, maybe it's about Persephone's choice of eating the pomegranate seeds or not, or maybe it's about weaving woman and how her threads become unraveled in the cave of all knowing. Or maybe it is Red Riding Hood and the relationship of humans and wolves and forests. um, then that gives us a cauldron while we're exploring a whole bunch of plants or our issues in relationship to the plants. So I like to draw in the land, the nature, these stories that are so earth centered, and they also connect us into, I'm a bit passionate about this, they connect us immediately to the other world. So they bring the mythic imagination into greater life within us and enable our presence to bring life into the other world, because that's what's been severed so much in our rationalist logical world, and in a lot of our uh, latest herbal medicine teaching, is that the rational is dominant over the imaginal, and our imagination, our divine holy uh, inspiration, and how that level of inspiration and creativity arises from the land, and the stories that come from the land, and what happens in that interface between us and the other world and the land, because once they used to always operate together. And here we are having to relearn how to weave all of these threads of participation together into a dance of wholeness. It's like we're starting to reform what used to be called the old fairy accord, where the other world, before the veil came down, when the other world was directly involved and active with this 3D realm, and the shining ones, the fae, the little people, the spirits of plants, we could cross between the veil easily. So
Mm.
we're relearning that these days. We're relearning the importance of anchoring the the other world into the life force here to bring in more abundance, more fertility, more spirit, to come back into that. I mean, Indigenous people have always walked between the worlds, on country, and we're just remembering how to do that uh, as Westerners. It's like the way that herbs used to only ever be given out in Western European tradition, always with a charm, because a charm or a ritual would, it was thought that a plant in Celtic times, a plant would not work properly unless you honored it,
Mm.
unless you praised it, unless you sang that little song, because then it would be activated and you're bringing the other world in. That if it was just a piece of something, it's not going to work if you just eat this by itself. I have to honor it, praise it, say the charm, and and that will help open the portal into its bigger consciousness, which lies within between the worlds in another dimensional space in the other world. And if that door isn't open, then we can't access the spirit of it, and the medicine's not going to work. So that's sort of how I kind of weave stories and realms, and that I feel is crucial. How do
Mm.
we walk with all of the worlds? Yeah,
Beautiful. Well, I'm definitely
that was a
signing up to
feel.
your storytelling course. You just sold me. That's amazing. For any of the listeners as well, I'll provide a link for your course when this interview is aired as
Oh,
well. That's a
I'll
really
send
beautiful offering. I
links
haven't
to you.
heard of anyone else offering anything like that in Australia. So yeah, thank you for bringing us back to the roots of fairy tales, and it's really beautiful hearing how you then relate that into into working with the plants as well. That's really beautiful. Thank you very much for sharing that. It's really special. So the next something that I really like to ask people that come onto the show is, and in a way it's been woven throughout our conversation already, but I would love for you uh, to picture an ideal world, or the future world that we're creating, in terms of herbal
Mm,
education and plant medicine education and learning, teaching and learning. Maybe it's something that's missing now, or maybe just something, yeah, to add to how it is, or just, yeah, if you could just paint a bit of a picture or something you'd like to see happen, something,
mm.
yeah, there's something that gets
Oh,
potentized, I think, when it's not just a
yes.
conversation between you and I, but because of all the thousands of people that are going to listen to this episode, we can really kind of potentize our um, projections, our visualizations for the future, and kind of create that together. So I'd love to hear what
Yes.
world you'd like to co-create.
Herbal education centres that have herb farms. I know
Mm.
a lot of people live in the city and they're not able to, if there was this gorgeous college that was out somewhere, you wouldn't be able to do that. But to be able to go, every few weeks there'd be a retreat out at the herb center, or you'd go out for a day every month or so, so that you could get to know and build a relationship with the plants while you're being guided um, by some of the teachers, so that you can know the plants through different seasons, and you can feel in your body, and you know when somebody needs passion flower compared to valerian, because you know the quality of the taste and the feel and the texture, and you know how different it is. Am I giving roots or aerial parts? I'd love for there to be a teaching of the discernment between uh, what kind of plant do you need to give somebody? Are you needing to bring in a bit more of an elemental approach? Do you need to give the earth of a plant? Does it need to have a big tap root, this plant, to give to somebody? Or are you needing to bring in more the qualities of air, and you're maybe giving whichever um, leafy, fine leafy plant to that person. So, an elemental quality, knowing the plant by taste, a conscious awareness of being apprentice, have an apprenticeship with the plants themselves, and then being guided with that, with learning all of your other um, sort of 3D realm information, so that you're memorizing everything you need to know, but you're actually living it in a different way. And also, because we're getting vibrationally so much more sensitive, I'd really like there to be education around posology, around dosing, in a much more of a flexible way, so that there's a shift from precise pharmacological, um, or that precision with herbal pharmacy and biochemistry. I know there's sort of a fine line and a grey area there, but to have more conversations around that grey area of how is this whole herb working? Why are we taking out those active constituents? What is our place as herbalists? How are we addressing things? I know for me that I do not want to be a herbal pharmacist. And others are a lot better at working in that clinical sphere than I am, but not at the expense of the plants, and not at the expense of, I can't stand the waste of, if I'm taking out this active constituent and modifying it in a certain way, and then uh, patenting it, and then making a fortune after sticking it into aluminium packets. I want there to be accountability to the plants and the wastage of that. If 3/4 of the plant is being thrown out because you've extracted the capsaicin, or the whatever it might be. Um, and this idea that plants aren't strong enough. So that for that to be incorporated into the medicine, this coming back to our holistic roots of appreciating the difference between um, what Western medicine does and offers diagnostically and acutely, and how and what we offer, um, and finding a different relationship with the spheres instead of trying to bring ourselves into more of that medical sphere. I'd love there to be a lot more exploration of and trust in how dynamic plant spirit medicine work is, of learning, seeing we can access conversations with plants. I don't want to continue to be considered an idealistic fantasist because I communicate with plants, because I listen in and feel their impact in my body, and invite people to invite in the spirit of a plant for healing. I don't want to be considered to be way out in woo woo land because I do that. I feel that it is valid and it is important and it is crucial that we bring that into uh, our healing work, and to continue to learn from that and to navigate around it and to give people the skills to be able um, to navigate through that way. So, to learn the skills of presence and listening, deep listening practice, and to be able to develop their intuition, the intuition of their belly, of their gut instincts, of their heart, of their brow. So, their three intuitions, to learn how to support and stabilize themselves through their auric field. So, some basic energetic awareness, and then to bring all of that into the herbal medicine practice, and to be able to work in a way that is sustainable, that is vibrationally aware, that is aware of the specific frequencies and consciousness of different plants, and to be able to offer and communicate those with greater clarity. So maybe you're giving 3 herbs in this beautiful synergy in a small bottle, instead of 200 mils every 2 weeks, of a combo of um, I'm going to address this issue, and this issue. So the subtleties of herb combining and the synergy of herbal combining, I'd love to see taught, and the impact of intention with combining, of how we alter flower essences, we alter our herbs subtly when we give them out to clients, depending on our perception. I've seen that time and time again. Um, a lot of other stories, which I won't go into now, but um, so those sort of subtleties, and to practice that, and to also have the skills in how to follow up with clients, of if this is what they're presenting with, then how do I deepen with this over, if I'm working with them for 6 months. So that level of care in follow up, and to know where you're going with that, and the more of the recognition of flower and rock essences, rather than just something that is poo-pooed and considered to be still not exist. Oh, that's the fluffy subject. But for that to be honored and to be respected, so that, okay, we really need to address what's happening for you emotionally, because that is going to make a huge difference on your heart, your lungs, your liver. So coming in with supporting, sorry, I could go on. There's a whole range of things I'm passionate about there. Oh, oh, I'll just catch my breath.
Mm-hmm. Aho to all
Mm.
of that. That's very potent,
Oh.
very, very beautiful. I was right there with you with
Mm.
all of that. And yeah, everything you just said really reflects yeah, that's the world that we're going to be creating together, that we are creating together. There's so many people around
Yes,
Australia and around the world that have very similar vision to everything you just said there. So,
yes.
we're all playing our part in, slowly building
Mhm.
that picture, and we're
Yes.
getting there. So yeah, that's
Oh,
so.
we are. And having the vision like the elder tree have, like what you're bringing together there, it's like, yes,
Mm,
what they're doing in America, in those, a lot of the colleges, is
mm,
fantastic. And some of the different root schools, traditional root schools in the UK that I'm aware of. So bringing in a lot more of that approach.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was some things that
Mm,
you shared in there that really drove home for me the importance of practitioners doing the self work, the importance of practitioners being really grounded and connected, and like you said, deep listeners, and really connected to their gut instincts, and really centered, and all of these practices that aren't being taught much in the kind of institutions. There's only so much that they can teach before they're like, okay, you're ready after this many years to start finding your own way. And there's only so much that can be taught in that space, but it is so important for people that are administering medicines to be really connected and centered, and connected to their intuition, connected to their instincts, and yeah, and perceptive, and open minded, and level headed, and all of those attributes. And you just got me really thinking, because the elder tree, as you might already know, we're planning to offer like internships, and have so
mm,
that people that have just freshly come out of the colleges and are like, okay, I've been trained to be a practitioner, before just launching into their own practice, they've kind of got that intermediary step of coming and having a really embodied learning space where they can come and be in our holistic clinic, and come and have teachers like yourself that will help to really train those skills around intuition, and deep listening, and then how that relates to being a good practitioner that's going to have an effective, and then all the things you're saying about the not needing the large doses, and all that kind of like posology, all the dosing and all of that, just to bring that in as complementary, kind of integrating all the learning they've just had in the colleges, and really bringing it into like embodied practices that connected with the plants. And so yeah, you've given me a few things to really think about there, and I really hope. I know that you were one of the first real like elder teachers that reached out when we announced the elder tree, and said, okay, something's coming, get ready. And I remember you reaching out, and writing to me, and basically saying that you'd love to share some of your gifts to the space. And yeah, and I would love that. I would love if we could have, once we're all set up and everything, to have you come up with your very unique, and in my experience very needed wisdom and angle, and where you're coming from, and get to bring that into our, even as intensives or something like that, come and bring it to our students and to our emerging practitioners, to help them to be prepared for the world, and to be good practitioners that are really yeah, connected, and doing it in a
yes.
really good way.
Yeah. And it's about creating ongoing community support
Mm.
for our practitioners, just as they're learning, and just ever onwards. It's always just so good to yak to another bunch of herbies.
Hmm.
Uh, so creating those places, the forums
Hmm.
where we can do that. That's fantastic. I love what you're doing.
Yeah,
Mm,
thank you. Yeah, it's exciting. Definitely exciting, big journey ahead. Ah,
yeah.
beautiful. So, wow, thank you for sharing that. That was really potent, really potent. You know, good visualization there for what we're going to be creating together. So,
Mm,
I think we're going to start kind of roughing it up. And I would love if you felt to share with the listeners some of your current offerings that are happening, like what's really alive for you, and what you're offering to the world currently. Any like upcoming, talked about the fairy tale course, but I know you have the anointing, which really caught my eye, the anointing learning spaces you have coming up, because I used to run an essential oil company, and we stocked spikenard, and I heard. And this
mm,
also weaves in the storytelling thing too, because I'd learnt that Mary Magdalene anointed Jesus Christ's feet on the cross with spikenard, and for his soul to cross over, or something like this. That at the time I felt really clear on the story, and I was telling people about that, and suddenly I just sold out on spikenard, like the story that I'd heard and shared
the story
spread so
carries.
quickly that I was
Yes.
like, oh my God, I'm out of spikenard. This thing that normally never sells is just like all gone. And
Yes.
and yeah, so anyway, but I haven't really had much experience in the world of anointing. I'd love to hear about that offering you have, and just any kind of upcoming spaces that the listeners might be interested in knowing about.
Okay, so what I've got upcoming is, let's see, I'm running an essence course online at the moment. That's about half over. And I've got Alchemy in the Desert, which is an essence program out at Broken Hill and Mutawinji, which is over spring equinox this year. So 20th of September for about 5 nights out in the desert of making essences and exploring the plants out here. Let's see, I'll be doing, I'm just about to go overseas with Jane Elworthy, my partner. We do often do a lot of work together, and we're running a program in Vanuatu called Lemurian Homecoming. So my mind is sort of focused with that at the moment. And then once I land back, I'll be starting to run more of the plant spirit programs online. So I'll put up links for that once they're happening. There's a rose ceremony online that will be coming up. Probably have to make it later July now. Wild Presence, the desert retreat, which is actually a 7 night big journey in the desert, which is about what I was talking before, combining story and land and spirit and soul coming together out at Mutawinji and out at the back of Broken Hill to connecting with the land here. And that the theme of that is she carries the sky within her. And that's about developing our own sense of spaciousness and relationship with the stars and the heavens. And in order to be able to have that sense of breadth and vision within ourselves, we've got to be anchored to the earth first. So it's about connecting with the myth of the world tree and of Spider Grandmother, the weaver between all of the worlds.
Mm.
So that will be October 31 to November the 6th. So Wild Presence, that's a women's program that's coming up, and I also work for the School of Sacred Storytelling, which is based in Los Angeles and set up by a storyteller teacher of mine, Leah Lamb. So I'll be running Hearth Stories, which is that starts in September. There's 4 fairy tales that I'll be working with in depth, and you can either come along to one or the 4 of those. And let's see what else is happening. Through the American School, I'm running Wild Presence Sacred Nature, a 4-week program of deep connection with plants and with land over August. Yeah, there's sort of a whole range of things happening here and there. So I'll create some links for you
Mm.
um, so you can follow up.
Wow, beautiful. You're absolutely prolific. It's amazing.
Yeah, I love bringing people out to the desert here. It just shifts our perception and our perspective so much so that our sense of identity can start shifting in ways that would never it doesn't happen when we're in the city, or uh, there's a changing in our relationship with the horizon, literally and metaphorically.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's very, very transformational. People are always say, well, there was life before Wild Presence or Soul Song, and now there's this.
Yeah.
So bring yeah.
Yeah, I can really relate to that when I find that when I go out into the desert, it's like it kind of declutters the whole story. And actually, yeah, it really
Yes.
helps me to find like be with my true essence and connect with what's actually present rather than the stories that I've, any stories or busyness or whatever. It's just that vastness, that openness allows for so much clarity and connection. It's really beautiful. Well, I
Yes.
would like to come to all of that. That all sounds really amazing. And for the listeners as well, yeah, I'll put links to all of those offerings in the show notes as
Thank you.
well. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of people out there that'll be really loving to come along to those. They're really
Thank
beautiful
you.
offerings. So thank you for creating them and offering them, and for all of the work that you do, Jacqui. Yeah.
And thank you for the opportunity for a conversation, because often when we have conversations with others, things get
Mm.
clarified in different ways as well. It's always back to that participation together and what gets woven and what might spark from it. So thank you.
Beautiful. Well, my heart's feeling really joyful. Thank you so much for our conversation today.
Oh, pleasure,
Have a beautiful day.
pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Herbal Education segment of the Elder Tree podcast. Stay tuned every new moon as I interview amazing and inspiring herbal educators from around Australia. To find out more about the Elder Tree, you can go to our website, which is theeldertree.org. And through our website, you can subscribe to our mailing list. You can also follow our journey on Instagram and on Facebook. Thank you again so much and have a most wonderful day.